Alright, good day class. This is Isaac Humanitarian Foundation e-learning platform, and I am your host for today's class. This is Literature in English class, and I am your instructor for today. My name is Kayode Olugbola. For today's class, we want to look at the topic sound devices and imageries in poetry. Sound devices and imageries in poetry. Yes, that's the topic for today. Sound devices and imageries in poetry. Yes, of course, know that the poetry is one of the genres of what? Literature that employs what? Sound devices and what? Reflected different images. Exactly. In poetry, we discuss sound devices, which are what are used to portray the thematic preoccupation of what? The poems. And then also, we look at what? The different images or imageries that are what? Depicted to visualize what? The reality in poetic composition. So, we have two in one word topics here. We have one, sound devices, and then two, we have what? Imageries. The sound devices in poetry, they include 1, onomatopoeia, 2, assonance, 3, alliteration, 4, consonance, 5, rhyme and rhythm, 6, idiophone. These are sound devices in what? In literature. And then the imageries, on the other hand, imageries include number 1, we have our tactile imagery. Tactile imagery, that's the first one. Tactile imagery. Number 2, we have auditory imagery. Auditory imagery. Number 3, we have visual imagery. Visual imagery. Number 4, we have our olfactory imagery. Olfactory imagery. Number 5, we have the gustatory imagery. Gustatory imagery. Gustatory imagery. Number 6, we have our thema imagery. Thema imagery. Thema imagery. And then lastly, we have kinesthesia imagery. Kinesthesia what? Imagery. Take notes. These are the types of imageries that are what? Depicted in poetic what? Compositions. Now, poetry as a genre combines what? These two elements to what? To bring out the thematic preoccupation or the themes that the poet wants to pass across to what? To the readers. So in poetry, we always what? Combine sound devices and what? And imagery. And when we talk about sound devices, we have all these depicting or representing what sound devices. When we talk about imagery, these are the types of imageries that can what? Be reflected in a work of what? Of art. Alright, so let's progress from the angle of sound devices first. Now, the sound devices they are used to what? To represent ideas in a work of art. And the first one we have is what? Onomatopoeia. What is onomatopoeia? Onomatopoeia is a sound device in which high sounding words indicate their meaning. A device where there is use of high-sounding words to indicate their meaning is called onomatopoeia. So when you have high-sounding words that show their meaning in poetry, we call it what? Onomatopoeia. It can be what? Sounds of animals. It can be sounds of what? Of human beings. Exactly. It can be sounds of animals or what? Sounds of human beings. So in onomatopoeia, we now discuss what? Sounds of animals and what? Sounds of human beings. For instance, you look at let's look at sounds of animals. Number one, goat. Goats, bleat, isn't it? Elephant, trumpet. Lions, roar. Yes. Hyenas, laugh. Apes, gibber. Fowls, crow. We have other sounds. I said goats, bleat, elephants, trumpet, lions, roar, hyenas, laugh, apes, gibber, fowls, croak, horses, neigh. Then we have other animals. We have a rabbit. We have a sparrow. We have and so on and so forth. So we will not spend much time on this aspect. These are sounds of what of animals that indicate what their meanings. Now, for objects, we look at the sounds of what of objects. Number one, we have a skirt, switch. 2, tires, screech. 3, objects, dangle. Chains, hammer, okay, these are sounds of what of objects. Then again, we look at what sounds of human beings. Sounds of human beings. Sounds of human beings. And in this aspect, we have a 1, wailing, groaning, mourning, weeping, crying. We have wailing, groaning, mourning, weeping, crying. These are sounds of what? Human being. These are what? Sounds of objects. These are sounds of animals. Now, when you use all these sounds to depict their meanings in literature, it is termed what? Onomatopoeia. So onomatopoeia, I said, is the use of high-sounding words to suggest what their meaning within a literary word context. Number 2, we have assonance. Assonance, number 2. Assonance is a device where you have repeated vowel sound in the middle of words, the words. When you have repeated vowel sounds in the middle of the words, it is called assonance. That is, you have 2 or more words, and in those words, you have the same vowel sound being what? Repeated. That gives us an instance of what? Assonance. Example, look at this poem written by Edward Darlington. That is Richard Corey, written by Edward Darlington. Line 1 said, whenever Richard Corey went downtown, what I want to use there is what? Downtown. From now. Whenever Richard Corey went downtown. From now. Look at this line. This line contains what? The repetition of similar vowel sound. What is that? Look at it. Down. In down, we have what? This sound here. In town, we have the what? The vowel sound. In now, we have what? The vowel sound. That's why when you read this, it's the line produces what? Similar sound pattern. Downtown, from now. When you have repeated vowel sound, it is called assonance. Take note. Look at this example again. Those that I guard are okay. Those that I guard. Look at this line. Those that I guard. This is a line from the poem An Irish Airman Foresees His Death. An Irish Airman foresees his death. The poem opens, I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere among the cloud above. Those that I guard, I do not love. Those that I fight, I do not what? Hate. So I need this line. Now look at it. That has what? This sound. Guard. You have that, guard, that, guard. Repeated word, vowel sound. That is an instance of what? Of a assonance. Yes. But this one is long R. This one is long R. This one is short R. But the two sound alike. So it is sound that we need. So when you have repeated vowel sound in literature, it is called an assonance. Take note. Number 3 is alliteration. Alliteration is a device where you have repeated consonant sound at the beginning of each line. A device where you have repeated consonant sound at the beginning of each line. At the beginning of each word in a line. Why assonance has to do with what? Repetition of vowel sounds. Alliteration, on the other hand, has to do with the repetition of similar consonant sound at the beginning of each word, not line now. It is the repetition of similar consonant sound at the beginning of each word on a line. Example, if I have God made man and man made money. God made man and man made money. Look at it. We have man, me sound. We have N in the second word. We have N in made. We have N in man. We have N here. We have N here. We have N here. So when we have repeated consonant sound, that is an instant word alliteration. Look at this as well. We have a highly delicate diplomatic duty. This is from Henry Barlow's Building a Nation. Yes. Henry Ballot's Building Nation. Today, I did my share. In Building the Nation, I drove a permanent secretary to an important urgent function. In fact, the menu reflected its importance. Cold bear beer with small talk, fried chicken with niceties, ice cream to cover stereotype jokes, coffee to keep the PS awake on return journey. I drove the permanent secretary toward an important urgent function, highly delicate diplomatic duty, you know. If you look at this line, it has an alliteration. How? We have delicate, D, diplomatic, D, duty, D. So at the beginning of these words, we have what? Repeated consonant sound. That gives us what? Alliteration. That gives us an alliteration as what? A concept. Next, we have a consonance. Consonance is when you have what? Repeated consonant sound at the middle of each line. When you have repeated consonant sound at the middle of, not necessarily at the beginning. Why you repeat the same consonant sound at the beginning of each word for alliteration? In consonance, you repeat similar consonants at the middle of each word. You repeat similar consonant sound at the middle of each word. Then we are giving you rhyme and reading in the previous classes. I said rhyme scheme has to do with what? The identification of the sound or beat pattern produced by what? By the last word at the end of each line. When you consider the last word at the end of each line to get the beat pattern, it is called what? Rhyme scheme. Then reading. Reading is the beat pattern, the internal beat pattern that is produced by a line of what? A poem. The regularity of beat pattern produced by the line of a poem is called what? Reading. Why the consideration of the sound at the end of each word, at the end of each line in a poem is called rhyme scheme. Then lastly, for sound pattern, we discuss what? Idiophone. Idiophone is also what? A sound device. Idiophone is also a sound device in a work of art. These are the sound devices that are used to what? A work of art. We have onomatopoeia, assonance, alliteration, consonance, rhyme and rhythm, and what? Idiophone. Then the second part to it is what? What we call imageries. Yes, imageries. A poetic composition reflects what? Different. A poetic composition reflects what? A particular imagery. Different poetic compositions reflect what? Different images or images. That's why we have types of imageries. And the types of imageries are tactile imagery, auditory imagery, visual imagery, olfactory imagery, gustatory imagery, thermal imagery, and kinesthesial word imagery. Now, what are these imageries? Now, take note, class. The first one is called tactile imagery, and this one is called what? Imagery of touch. That is imagery of what? Touch. We call it imagery of touch and imagery of touch and feeling. Imagery of touch and feeling, exactly. Imagery of touch and feeling is called tactile imagery. Number two is what? Auditory imagery, which is called imagery of sound. Imagery of sound. Imagery of sound or hear. Imagery of sound, exactly, is called auditory imagery. Look at number three, visual. Visual, that is sight. Sight. Imagery of what? Sight. Imagery of sight is called visual. Imagery of sight is called visual. Yes, it enables us to see what is going on in a work of art. We call it a visual imagery. Yes, this one, your ability to hear sound. Your ability to hear sound. That one is called what? Auditory imagery. Ability to hear sound is auditory. Take note. Why? Your ability to feel and touch. That one is called what? Tactile imagery. Next, we have olfactory imagery. Olfactory imagery has to do with what? The imagery of a smell. Imagery of smell. Which organ is used for that? That's what? Nose. Imagery of what? Smell is called olfactory imagery. Then next, we have gustatory imagery. Gustatory imagery has to do with the imagery of taste. Imagery of taste or what? Of food. Imagery of taste of food is gustatory in form. Imagery of taste of food is gustatory. Then you have tema. Tema imagery means what? Imagery of eat. Imagery of eat, yes. Imagery of eat is what? Is tema imagery. Then the last one is what? Kinesthesia imagery. Kinesthesia imagery. Which is what? Imagery of what? Of movement. Imagery of movement. Imagery of movement is what? Kinesthesia imagery. These are the types of imageries that we have what? In literature. Number one has to do what? Imagery of feeling or touch. Number two has to do what? Imagery of sound. Number three has to do what? Imagery of sight. Four has to do what? Imagery of smell. Five is the imagery of taste of food. While tema is what? Imagery of eat. And then lastly, kinesthesia is what? The imagery of what? Of a movement. All this, when you pick up a particular poem and you read, you see all these what? Imageries in them. So when you pick up a particular poem and you read that poem, you should be able to identify the particular imagery that is what? Reflected in the work. For example, if I give you this poem from Sierra Leone, that is the dining table. Let's see the table. If you look at the dining table written by Anoel Banabon, you will tell me what the imagery is now. If I say that's the dining table, the poem opens with dinner tonight comes with gun wound. Our desert tongue lick vegetable blood. Pepper strong enough to push scorpion up our head. Guests look into the oceans of bowl as vegetables die on their tongue. Can you see that the imagery being painted, guess what? Is imagery of what? Food, pepper, vegetable, die, yes, dinner. That one is gustatory imagery. Take note. If you look at vanity, for example, vanity is a poem that mocks the condition of what? Of African people. That what? Our predicament today is self-inflicted. That Africans cause their own what? Undoing or downfall. How? By neglecting their own culture in the pursuit of what? European culture. But then the type of imagery that is reflected in the poem is what? Visual. Why? We can see the reality in what? Africa. We can see what the condition that befalls what? African people. And also, if you read a poem like Crossing the Bar, we have two imageries here. We have auditory imagery and visual imagery. It is auditory. Why? The poet persona in the poem claims that what? He could hear what? Sound. He could hear a bell calling for what? For home. He could hear, he said, twilight bell, sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me. Twilight bell, that one depicts what? Imagery of sound. What he could what? Hear. He had what? Home call. Through what? That twilight what? Bell. Then it has visual imagery. Why? We can see that the poet persona is advanced in age, is old. That's why the poem is written to foretell the imminent death that will soon what? Happen to the poet persona, and his readiness to depart from this world and what? And face death. Death as an opportunity for him to meet with his creator, whom he calls what? Pilot. This is what reflected in the poem. So poetry generally combines what? sound devices and imageries to what? To portray the thematic preoccupation of what? Of the poet. That is the end of today's class. Yes, sound devices and imageries. So let me stop here for today. I will see us again some other time. This e-learning platform was brought to us by Isaac Humanitarian Foundation. I'll see you some other time. Good day, class.